Good day, everybody. Thanks for joining today's webcast. We're going to get started in just about another few seconds. Just let the stragglers join in with us. But today's topic is the top SOLIDWORKS PDM enhancements that were brought out in the last couple of releases. So give me about another 20 seconds and we'll kick things off. All right, so let's get going. If you're new to the interface, if you guys have any questions throughout the session, please feel free to go to the questions section in the GoToMeeting, and I'll be more than happy to revisit those questions at the end of the session and answer as many as I can online. Otherwise, I'll take them offline and make sure I get back to every one of you. So again, today's topic is the top SOLIDWORKS PDM enhancements for 2018, a bit more specifically. My name's Scott Lidgy. I'm the Technical Solutions Team Manager here at Javelin Technologies. I've been with Javelin for about 5 years now. And PDM is one of my strengths or key focuses here at Javelin. So as many of you probably already know, but just a reminder, Javelin is a evaluated added reseller for SOLIDWORKS, and we do a lot more than just sell SOLIDWORKS. I mean, we are here to make sure that everybody's using the software the best way possible. We've got a lot of great training available to you guys. Technology-wise, I mean, we're always looking for other technologies that complement the SOLIDWORKS solution set. Today we're going to be focusing on process. Our main focus is PDM today, but we have a lot of other management and data management systems available. And manufacturing is becoming a bigger and bigger part of what we do to help our customers get their designs from concept right down to the manufacturing floor as quickly and as error-free as possible. So I thought I'd split today's sessions up into really two groups. One, administrative enhancements, sort of behind the scenes, what can be set up now in 2018 in PDM. And then the second half will be more on the user enhancements, so stuff we can do as the user, how we can manage our files better, get more out of a data management system. There's a lot of information that comes to us from SOLIDWORKS when the next release comes out on SOLIDWORKS, about 250 enhancements. I feel like PDM, quite often a lot of these enhancements get left behind. It's data management and not quite as exciting as all the flash that you get from SOLIDWORKS. But there's some really nice stuff in here that really make your day-to-day work just that much easier and better. So if we start with the administrative changes, I thought I'd cover these topics. The file upgrade utility. A lot of people actually don't know this utility exists. It does not get installed by default. So we'll talk a little bit about that. The card editor, it's a small thing, but having an undo command has been a long time coming, and I'll show you why that's so great now. I thought I'd throw in a few 2017 enhancements as well, because there were some good ones last year, and I didn't have a session like this for 2017, so we'll pick up on a couple of those as we go too. So in 2017, for administrative changes, one of the big ones was the ability to copy group permissions when a new group is created. So let's start with the file upgrade utility. If you've ever gone and upgraded from SOLIDWORKS 2017 to 2018, the next major release, a lot of complaints come back that, my SOLIDWORKS is running slower. Well, typically that's because the files have not been updated. So SOLIDWORKS, when you open up that data set, is actually going through a conversion process to update all the parts, assemblies, and drawings to the latest version and waiting to be saved. And if you do that just at the top level, let's say a drawing or a top level assembly, when you save, you're not saving that upgraded file to all the sub assemblies and sub parts. So it's best to run some sort of utility to make sure that all those commonly used parts, whether they be libraries or currently running projects, get those all up to date so that you're getting the best performance out of your SOLIDWORKS. If you didn't have PDM, a lot of people would be using the task scheduler to do these types of tasks. That task does not work inside of a PDM well, because we've got all the security of checking in, checking out, how do we handle versions and revisions and so on. So this utility is located when you get your downloaded data set to install from. Buried within the SWPDM client, you'll see a support folder, and within that, you're going to see this valve version upgrade. It's a single exe. So when you run it, it's just going to install this nice little application inside your Windows environment so that you can run this. So the enhancements for 2018 were this nice bit about notifying users. You know, if a problem occurs during the upgrade process, get notified. When it's finished, let's get notified when the process is completed, because it is a time-consuming process and you're not going to sit there watching it all day. Upgrade checked out files. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but key is, you know, if previously, if any files were checked out, the utility would not run. It would say you need to check in all these files before running the upgrade utility. And now, because there's a time-consuming task, there's a nice little monitor utility as well, which I'll talk about. So let's take a look. If we jump out, once the utility is installed, you're going to see it in your Start button. So if I run my file version upgrade utility, and let's just start a new one. This would be similar to previous years. What version would we like to upgrade to? We're going to go to 2018. Which vault are we working with? And then within that vault, what do we want to upgrade? You might not want to do the whole vault in one step, and definitely we don't want to do that today. So let's pick just a specific folder, let's say. So I'm going to just do my workflow folder here. And then within that, you can be very specific as to what you want to upgrade. You may not want to do every file or all legacy files. Maybe it's only certain files at a certain status in our workflows. Maybe there's certain variables you want to search on and only upgrade those. All right, so a lot of control, but let's move on to the next step. It's going to give me a listing of all the files it finds in that selection. And then how do you want to upgrade them? Do you want to create a whole new version inside the vault, being a 2018 version, or do you want to just do a version overwrite? So it remains the same, but updates to 2018 version. This is all the same from previous years. Now this is where we start to see some of the new enhancements. First one, well, let's put in a comment. That's it. Goes with every version, but we need to put some sort of comment as to why we're running this, so it's in the history inside PDM. We're not going to go through all the settings because they are similar to year, but down here we're getting into the new enhancements for 2018. First one is adding in a success or failure notification. So using PDM's notification tool, I'm going to say administrators, the admin user, is going to get notified if we have any problems or when things are complete. This is one of the key steps if you want to get into the monitoring, is actually doing a divide or creating a work instruction, because the nice thing about this utility, you can install it on many systems and get a lot of different stations working on this upgrade sequence, maybe overnight, over the weekend. So you can set up different work groups if you want. Key step is we need to point all the computers to a shared folder. So this is very important that it needs to be a UNC path so that all systems can see it. So let's just type in my computer, and I have a share in there already called upgrade. And so now we go to the next step, and it's going to give me a nice little rundown of what it plans to do, right? And if we hit continue, it's actually going to start running this through. The last enhancement for 2018 is this monitoring. So when we first ran this utility, you saw the monitoring as an option. I could have gone directly and just opened up the monitoring tool if it was already running in the background on multiple systems. And it's just going to show me, you know, the progress on how many files have been done, how many are yet to go, and a bit of a percentage on how much it's done or has to go. All right, so some nice little enhancements there in this tool. Again, it's a very important step if you want to have a nice performing 2018, is to upgrade those common files. The card editor, the undo command. Again, like I said before, this is a long overdue enhancement. When you're in the administrative tool, some of you may have never been in here because this is sort of behind the scenes, under the hood, so to speak. Inside these cards, we've got these card editors to do the layouts that you see whenever you pick on a file or a folder and what variables are shown. One of the annoying features of this interface was that if you ever come in and accidentally go to grab something, or you're trying to do a Windows select because you were trying to grab a bunch of stuff, but then you accidentally do a shift on something, you got to spend the time to realign things, make it all look pretty again. The nice thing is now we've got this undo command, same Windows functionality of a Control Z to undo back all those steps. and get things back in position. And then you can try again for your window select where you want to select all this, for example. Okay, and then save those changes. Very small one, but huge lifesaver for many of you out there. I'm sure you appreciate it. Last one for administrative changes is the copy group permissions when you're creating a new group. A lot of work goes in behind the scenes when you're setting up permissions, because I mean that's a big part of PDM is the security aspect. So if we go into the admin tool again, we've had this for users for quite some time, being able to copy permissions and settings from other users as we create a new one. Groups, however, didn't have this. So now if I say new group, we're going to give it a name. Maybe I call it a marketing group. But the security level for marketing, I'm going to say, is very similar to my drafters group or design. Let's do designers. And now when I do designers, what do I want to copy from them? Do I want to copy all the folder permissions? Do I want to copy the members? So who's in that group? Members are probably different in this case, so we'll leave that off, hit next. And this is just a huge time saver because the marketing group already knows which column preference I like, what sort of administrative privileges they may have, and then right down to folder permissions, what they can and can't do. And everything's already been set for me. And now I can tweak this, if there's things I want to take away from marketing that maybe the designers had, but huge time saver. All right, so that's pretty much it for administrative changes. Next one is user enhancements. What can we do with PDM to make our lives better every day? So a few that I've put together here is PDF creation for PDM standard. So most of these enhancements are always going to be for Pro because it's much more scalable. But this was a nice one for PDM standard. We'll get into more detail. One of the biggest, or two of the biggest enhancements for 2018 was this idea of branch and merging as a design tool. Revision tables is the second one. Being able to actually populate automatically and have a link between revision tables and our PDM system. The ability to have better support for non-SOLIDWORKS files, so maybe an inventor data set or a UG data set. And that's thanks to the 3D Interconnect functionality that came out last year. New one, which many of you probably don't know about, is the electrical integration. So with SOLIDWORKS Electrical, there's always been a bit of a limitation as to how we can manage the electrical portion of our projects inside PDM. That now is available in SOLIDWORKS 2018. And then a few notables from 2017 that I thought were a good idea to revisit. One is the latest version overwrite to limit how many versions we have in our system. And then these three are almost one and the same. We were able to create PDFs automatically. And this is just for PDM Professional. Be able to create PDFs of the 3D PDF for model-based definition files, Office products, so your Word, Excel, PowerPoint, being able to create PDFs of those automatically, and a DWG being able to turn it into a PDF as well. So let's start with PDM, the PDM standard enhancement, which allows us now to create PDFs on SOLIDWORKS drawings. So there's a lot of limitations here as opposed to what we can do in PDM Professional. It is strictly for SOLIDWORKS drawings. The PDF can only be generated and published into the Vault. Pro, it's a little more flexible. If we want to send those PDFs outside the Vault, we can do so. It can't be run as a task like you have in PDM Professional. It has to be run through the workflow. So for example, on approval, SOLIDWORKS drawings will be given a PDF. Simple as that. And then the last one is the task that's running, when we run that PDF creation task, it has to be on the same sending system. So if I'm a manager and I'm approving that drawing file, SOLIDWORKS needs to be on my system because it has to run on my system to create the PDF to be put into the Vault. PDM Professional is much more flexible because we can dish it off to different clients to actually run the task. All right, there's nothing much more to show there. I mean, it's a nice feature for PDM standard to have that capability of creating PDFs of drawings. Okay, on to one of our big ones. So branching and merging. So this gives the designer a lot more flexibility. to explore new design ideas and have different branches of a part, assembly, drawing, and any combination thereof. Maybe an engineering change trial. You want to test a few ideas before you move ahead. Working with vendors or contractors. So again, being able to dish out different branches, let them all go on their own way and come up with different ideas, but be able to bring that back together at the end onto our main track of our design process. So let's take a look. So inside my vault here, let's just go into this sample project. You may notice here I've got this cushion, right? And this cushion, we've got a few different design ideas. There's branch 1, branch 2. So I'm going to show you how you initiate this. Now I'm going to use the right mouse button click, and I'm going to go actually higher level just to show you some of the capabilities. So if I select the assembly file and right click, you're going to see branch. If for some reason you guys don't have it here, the administrator will have to add that to the menu in the admin tool. Otherwise, you're going to always find all commands in drop-down menu, so that will also be visible here from the tools pull-down menu to go to branch. So if any of you have used copy tree or move tree, it's probably looking very familiar to you. It is basically the same interface. We're doing very similar work here. Difference being is we're going to give the branch a name, and it's just a way to track the branch. So in this case, I'm going to call it cushion mod 3. Okay, it's just a name to track it by. You can change where these branches versions are going, but we're going to just leave in the default project folder for now. Now what we do have to do is we have to change the name, especially if it's in the same folder. So I'm going to add a suffix to all branched files. So we're going to say dash branch 3, and we're going to hit OK to that. Now then, in this case, it's going to branch every file in here, and that's not what I want. I don't want to have every file sort of duplicated with different design variations. So let's take it all off for now. And in my case, I'm just wanting to do the cushion part. Okay. So once we have that set, we hit branch. And in the background, SOLIDWORKS PDM is going to copy that file. So now you'll see that I now have the branch 3 in place now. And you'll be able to diagnose this or get an idea what's happening here in a few different ways. Naming convention is going to help, obviously. But if we go to the tools pull down, we can also go to associated branches and see what that is branch 2 and what it was the originating file. So we can see that it came from this source file and is now being tested out in branch 3. Okay, so that's how we branch. And we can send this off to somebody. We can do all this separate work and separate design ideas on any one of these branch files, as you can see here. So we've got the plane, we got this squared off one, and just a single seam down the middle. Once you get to a point where, we're going to move forward with this idea, we want to merge that back into our design flow. So again, you can take apart, right click, and you're going to see merge. This one's really easy because it already knows the association. It knows the reference back to the original part. Okay, and you have some options again in here. How are we going to do this? Are we going back to the latest, back to the referenced? And then we simply say merge. So it goes back on as our main reference on the in the assembly file, so that if we go into our assembly, just open this guy up in SOLIDWORKS. If you watch the initial preview, it's going to be probably the original design we had, but then with the refresh or the rebuild inside SOLIDWORKS, we should be seeing the new branch being merged back on. We're going to check out the drawing in the assembly. I'm going to make some changes here in a minute. So there's the original. We do the full load, and boom, there we go. The new design has been merged back onto our design. So this is great because it just eliminates any of those headaches that people used to have with doing copies and adding names or replacing back into the main assembly. PDM is managing all that for us. So we move on to revision tables. This is kind of cool. So this is available for Standard M Pro I'm not mistaken, the branch and merge is only available in Pro. Having revision tables in our drawings is quite common, but to have it populate and link to what we're doing in PDM is very helpful. So having it, we're going to link all the data into the data card, and we're going to make sure that all that data is updated through the workflow. You know, on approval, when we stamp it, we're going to get the revision showing up. So maybe we're going to look at first, we're going to look at how that gets set up in the admin tool. And it's a couple of things you need to understand is we're mapping more variables. So there are some variables in there now that we can link to. So there's a SWRev table, which is the block. If you're familiar with that mapping technique inside PDM, we're going to map the table to an attribute, which would be any of the column headers in your revision tables. So you'll see a lot of the defaults like approver, approved date, and description, but there's nothing stopping you from adding your own custom ones as well. Okay, so let's go into the admin tool first to see how this gets set up. So inside the PDM admin tool, we now have a new SOLIDWORKS node, and that's because that houses two things. We've always had the toolbox control, but now that's where you're going to find revision tables. And in here, you just have to enable it to have PDM start to control the revision tables. Once enabled, a couple of simple options. First one is how many rows would you like to see consecutively in a drawing? So it will take off the fourth one when we get to four rows or 4 revisions. This one's important to have some sort of placeholder. It doesn't matter really what it is. It can be an underscore, it can be a dash, it can be a star. As far as usability, you want to sort of mimic your revision scheme. So for myself, I just have ABC for revisions. If you had A-1, you probably want to have a star dash star, so that when a user initiates a revision, he's not totally thrown off. You'll see what I mean by this when we get into it. There is a second tab. I'm not going to get into this one today, but this is more for if you're bringing in legacy data, what happens when we want to set the revision inside PDM of existing information inside of a block. Okay. So let's take a look. We're going to go into SOLIDWORKS. So let's open up the drawing for this. Let that rev up. So up in here, we've got a standard SOLIDWORKS revision block in here. And what I want to do is simply add a new revision. And you'll notice that because PDM is controlling it, it's automatically given it the date. I'm putting in the symbols here for that new cushion. But it's gone in as a star for now. Right? So that's that placeholder that we talked about. So let's just put in a description here. And that's basically it. So now our revision's been noted, and now we're going to go back to standard SOLIDWORKS or PDM workflows to make sure we, approve it properly. The right people are doing the approval. Today we're going to keep it simple. I'm going to be the approver as well, and I'm going to stay inside SOLIDWORKS. Not that you have to be inside SOLIDWORKS to do this. We're going to go ahead and check in all those documents. And then I have 2 items I could go through the workflow with. Today is I'm going to use the admin approval because I can approve my own work, but typically you guys will probably submit for approval, have a manager go to the next step and approve it there. So I'm going to approve it, and we're going to approve the change documents the way it goes. Better format would be I'd be filling in the comments probably, but for today that's all we need to do. And then if you look inside the SOLIDWORKS drawing, it's gone in and updated everything about the revision. It's added the C, it's added the approver's initials. Also, how this all sort of works as well is that it's all linked to variables, right? Which means that if I was to look at the data card, this is showing the latest revision information on my data card. So it'll be shown here, it's going to be shown inside your Windows Explorer. So it's just a really nice enhancement that just annotates much better in our drawings, something we didn't really have access to. It'd be a very backwards way of working, being able to fill out a block and then come out and make those, having to approve it separately. All right, let's go back to the presentation. So non-SOLIDWORKS file support. As many of you know, 3D Interconnect came out last year. It was a great way to be able to work with other CAD files. And what you would typically see inside of PDM would be something like this, where I've brought in a bunch of CAD files right now. Sorry, Inventor files into this project. And if I was to try to do a check-in process here, it's only going to check in one file at a time. It doesn't understand the associativity between the Inventor parts and the assembly, right? So if we take advantage of SOLIDWORKS to go ahead and open up that Inventor file, so we'll bring in the assembly file. It's going to ask for a SOLIDWORKS assembly file for it to stick it into. And that's sort of like the envelope for it. And that's, that's sort of the power between 3D Interconnect, is that we're linking to that Inventor file, which is great. And we see the tree structure here. It understands the assembly and the parts at this point. So we'll save this up into that folder. And then let's close down the file, because that's really all we need to do in SOLIDWORKS. Let's go back to Windows. And so that now, if we were to do that check-in function on the envelope file, our SOLIDWORKS file, now we're seeing how that relates, right? We're seeing the reference structures there. So we'll check that all in. We got our previews, which is great. If we go to anywhere along the tabs of information, for example, if we go to contains on that assembly file, we're still going to see it. And it doesn't have to be the envelope. I mean, that's just our initial step to get the reference structure created. If I went to just the Inventor assembly, it still knows how that behaves, and vice versa. If I pick that Inventor part and go to where used, I'm going to see that it's used in the assembly and up to our envelope assembly. Bills of materials would also be available, so you're going to see that reference structure with quantities and so on. Okay, so in a nutshell, that's it. I mean, it's just the fact that now when we use that Interconnect functionality and check in inside PDM, it's going to understand those reference structures. All right, SOLIDWORKS electrical connector. This is very new. It's going to be packaged, so it's going to install with SOLIDWORKS automatically in 2019. But it is available now in 2018 Service Pack 1 or newer.
Electrical design?
Let's just not listen to the talking, but I'm just going to talk over it. As you can see here, it's integrated into the schematic tool very nicely with nice buttons that you were familiar with in other environments. The way it works is this. It's very much integrated the way we work in mechanical environments. So, if we create a project, we can have a nice electrical project where we can now give it information to start off a project from a templated environment, give it some information, leverage the power of PDM to create numbering systems. So maybe a contract number is issued or something like that. So once it creates the folder structure, in this case from the template, within it, you're going to see some automatic folders. You'll see a mimicking of what's inside the project, inside your electrical, mimicked inside PDM. So if you were to dig into the packaging line or the dispenser, within that, you're going to see all the schematics, in this case as DWG. So you don't need to have an electrical seat to have an idea what's going on with the project. So you'll see the project is in there as an overall zipped up file, and you've also got the complete PDF being generated. These are going to happen automatically on your check-ins and checkouts of PDM, so that you're always up to date, and other people, when appropriate, would have access, easier access to the data. Bills of materials are the same thing. So you'd have all the BOMs available to you for parts and wires and so on, visible in our BOM environment inside PDM. And the nice thing is that, if we browse to the different components, it's a linked connection to the actual library, so that if we pick one of those items and say where used, it's going to show me every project that's using any of those components. So they've done a really nice job with this. If you need help to get this up and going in your environment, please reach out and we'll get you connected with your sales rep and with our technicians to get that up and going. And then a couple last notes. So the noteworthy ones from 2017 for user enhancements. One nice one was last version overwrite. You want to control this a little bit. You don't just want everybody to be able to do this. Obviously, we don't want to be overwriting released versions or revisions, so you control it through the workflow and through the security. But it's a nice option to have open. So let me show you how it works, and I'll show you also behind the scenes of how we can control it. Let's just close some of this down. Let's just go to a simple part for this. Check out the file, and as you guys know, as you go through and make design changes to anything, I've checked out the file. Let's add a bunch of features here, and you can save as often as you want. And then, when you have something significant that you want to stamp or save, it's a good time to do that check-in function, right? But now, let's say I checked it in, and then I say, oh, geez, they asked me to turn it to a different color. And that's such a minor change. Do I really need to have a whole new version back in my vault? So, let's check it out of the system. Remembering that we have 2 versions. We're on the 2nd version right now. And let's just quickly do that. We're going to change the appearance of this part. Let's make it green for now. Again, that's a very minor change. We save it up. And for this time, when I do the check-in, though, down here, I've got this extra check mark that says overwrite the latest version. So typically, we'd be going to version 3 of 3. Checking this will keep me at version 2 and overwrite that last version. So check in. And this will just limit how many versions we're building up in our vault for some of these minor changes. I mean, it's nice to be able to check in a little more often. I mean, going for lunch, let's check it in, make sure it's safe and backed up on the server. But it just wasn't significant of enough change to warrant a whole new version. If we look inside the admin tool of this, how you want to control that a little bit. If we went down to the workflow, you'll notice that, let's say the work in progress would be a perfect point where you might want to leverage this functionality. I'm going to allow engineers, here's the option here, can overwrite latest version during check-in. So that's enabled, right? But where we don't want to have that happen is down here. If somebody was able to read and write to the released version, this one, you can see we cannot, it's unchecked, right? We don't want them to be able to overwrite the released version with any sort of design changes. So it's a great option to have, but you want to control it with the appropriate people at the appropriate time. And then the last one for 2017 noteworthy items was they brought in a lot more PDF capabilities just in the base installation. So it's just a task. There's a task for there are 3 different types. First one is outputting to 3D PDF if you're using model-based definition. It's a nice setup to link to your theme, your layouts. And you can have this being generated automatically, not needing to go into SOLIDWORKS to publish your model-based definition PDF. Same thing goes for Office products. So you can set up that people can either through the workflow or just simply right-click and go to a task to generate a PDF of the Word, Excel, or PowerPoint files. And then lastly is the DWGs and DXFs, being able to generate PDFs of those as well, and leveraging DraftSite to run those. And all those items, another one that I didn't list here, but really nice features that the default is always to create the PDF and give it the same name as the originating file. But in 2017 onward, we were able to actually leverage variables. So if you wanted to go ahead and change the name, maybe put a project number at the beginning of it or customer name at the end of it, you can do so during the publishing. So a lot of options there. And that brings us to the end. So again, in the question panel. Please feel free. If you have any questions, throw them up there. I'll stick around for a bit to answer as many as I can. Otherwise, I hope you guys had a few takeaways for yourselves. Maybe you got to go run to your admin guys and get them to make some changes to your implementation now. Or if you need our help in any way, please feel free to reach out to me at scott.lidgy@javelin-tech.com. We're more than happy to help you out. Thanks for joining.